All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Wednesday, hump day. I always say I'm happy on Wednesdays. I'm just checking to make sure that my phone ringer will ring if somebody calls me. And haven't had a lot of calls lately, but getting any is always nice. So hope to hear from you. And yeah, there it is. I can just barely have it very low so it doesn't disturb you when it comes in. So yeah, usual stuff today. Kind of, I'm going to focus a little bit more than I have lately on one of my favorite, I guess, punching bags, AOC. But I heard a video clip actually from last week, or saw it. We'll play it for you, where she really, I think, does admit, and I've seen this played in on other programs, yesterday and today. I don't think people really get exactly what she's saying, and I really want to make the point that she's putting the Democratic Party above principle, above you, above the American people, above what's right. She's making it very clear that's what she did. And that's not good. That's not what we want. Now, I'm certainly not saying she's the only one who does this, but she's done it in a way that, without getting anything even for it, without concessions. And then she's shocked that other people in the Democratic Party, like Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they aren't going to put the party above their Zionist, corporatist principles. They're not going to put the Democratic Party over their own personal best interests. And the saddest thing about all of this is that after, observing firsthand, AOC still is pursuing the same failed strategy of promoting a party whose leaders are totally indifferent to her personally and actively hostile to her policies, her principles. So if that's, don't expect one thing from her that's good, that's positive. Sure, if there are no costs to her, if she doesn't have to buck people with more power, or that she perceives with more power, with more influence, sure, she'll do the right thing. But when it comes to a face-off with leaders who have made it absolutely clear they're never going to give her what she wants, she's going to bend the knee every single time. Doesn't matter. All right, 240-242-5646. Would love to hear from you. 240-242-5646. Would hope that you will subscribe if you haven't done so already. There's the little bell and the button. It's all on the bottom right of your screen. And I've been playing around with my thumbnails, just in case you want to comment on this, with some of them having my image on it, standing there to the right. I actually like that. I think it's kind of good to brand videos with actual personal touch. I've got the logo. But to be frank, honestly, I have not seen response. In fact, we're seeing fewer. Now, maybe it's just I'm the wrong person. If I put George Clooney or Brad Pitt or someone like that, I guess I'm revealing my age, right? Those are sort of 90s stars. I don't know who are the stars today. If I put somebody who's a big star today, maybe that would obviously help more than putting my own face. I would hope I'm not actually actively driving people off. Maybe I am. That would be unfortunate. But again, I like to brand it with something personal beyond simply the logo. And what I hope to do is do direct comparisons, have some thumbnails which do have my image and some which don't, and then switch them off. And so we'll do that. YouTube does allow you, does have an app which allows you to do that, go A/B. So they'll show some thumbnails to some people and the other thumbnail to others, and then they'll see which performs better. The problem is I have a special kind of account, which I'm really frustrated with. I pay for it. It's a premium account. I've been authorized. I have no strikes. I had a strike. If you remember, I got a strike, but it's been, as far as I know, completely wiped off my record. Everything's good, but they won't allow me to swap thumbnails, which is too bad. We'll see if that changes to test. Okay, let's start where we always do, the terrible news from Palestine, from Gaza. And I think I like to use the word Palestine because the name Palestine, because one thing I understand is Israel rejects the notion that there's even such a country as Palestine. There's a nation. Bret Stephens just had this incredibly obnoxious column, as all of his are, in which he argues that it's all performative. People who want to recognize Palestine as a nation, it's absurd. Why are they even trying to do that? The best thing you can do for the people of Gaza is to just eradicate Hamas. That's his whole take. But obviously, if the Zion Nazis are going to screech and holler that loudly, maybe there really is value. I think that the Palestinian people should be recognized as an independent group with absolute right of self-determination. And that's where I would go with that. They are being starved to death. 5 more starved to death as famine deepens. Over 140 children now among the victims. And you can see them. I use this image. I only show image of the children and I guess some adults there lined up with their pans trying to get desperate for food. It's just so heartbreaking, so wrong, so evil what Israel is doing. There's no other way to look at it. And, I think that's one of the big criticisms, that I have, a condemnation of AOC is her failure with all that big soapbox that she has to take on the perpetrators of this genocide in her own party. And I think that has had tragic consequences. I was unable at airtime or just before airtime today to provide or to find a death count from yesterday into today. So I'm going to use this number from Al Jazeera. They have kills. Israel kills over 50 in Gaza, and Qatar calls Israeli attack. So they're attacking Gaza City. Apparently 1.3 million Palestinians have been herded into Gaza City. It's a death camp there, and Qatar calling it state terror, what Israel's doing there. So over 50 killed. So we don't have an exact number. That's 50 from yesterday. And I'll quickly show my my slide here with this is obviously a very rough estimate. They're always rough, even rougher than usual, because we don't have a count from yesterday into today from the Ministry of Health. But a minimum of, I count, 64,655 Gazans, at least 50 killed yesterday, and over 12,100 Palestinians killed in Gaza by Trump and Netanyahu, including likely over 6,000 women and children. And of course, the men are not all, or even mostly, or even a decent minority of whom are not, they're not terrorists. I mean, except for a tiny percentage. This is the killing, the carnage in Gaza, if you want to call it a war, has seen higher rates of civilian casualties than any conflict in recent times. Israel's killed more innocent people. Its military has simply, bought into the ethnic cleansing genocide of the Netanyahu administration. If you want to join me again, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I am glad I'm going out on Facebook. Yesterday, for some reason, we didn't get the video out on Facebook. Not sure what the cause of that problem was. I did some tests afterwards, and everything worked fine. So I really don't know. The computers are weird. I can't answer what they do. I'm often asked, why is it doing this? And I sometimes can figure it out, but lots of times I don't know why the computer's doing things. Sometimes a reboot is all you need. One of the premises of Halitics, is that the Republican Party and the Republican leadership is bad, that they are causing trouble, that they have caused terrible problems in the past. They've done terrible things. And, we can go back to however far back you want to go, bombing Cambodia, Nixon, Kent State. We can just go right through the Reagan tax cuts for the wealthy and tax hikes on the working class and middle class. There's just so many examples of terrible things that Republicans have done, and they continue to this day. Certainly the torture by Torturer Dick, by W, the war on the people of Iraq. There's, and right up into Trump and his abusive treatment of immigrants in his first term, now going full bore genocide, following in his predecessor Joe Biden's footsteps. So one of the operating principles of Halitics is we want something different than a Republican president. And when I point out how bad the Democrats are, it's with the goal of coming up with a solution, with something better. Either if there is a decent Democrat out there, I think Zoran probably is about the only one we can really identify right now, or saying, okay, we know the Republicans are unacceptable, but now we can also see the Democrats are also unacceptable. So what do we do? And my answer has been the Green Party, but I'm always open to any other options. I know Stephanie called in last week, I believe it was, and said, well, what about DSA? Why not DSA? Well, DSA has some good endorsements, I believe, but they're not a political party. It's not, you cannot, as far as I know, you cannot go into any voting booth in the United States in any election and vote for the DSA candidate. You have to vote for, you could vote for a candidate the DSA has endorsed, but they're not running on the DSA line because there isn't one. There's Green Party, there's Working Families Party, there's other parties, but DSA is not a political party. So I consistently push for the Democrat Party. There's apparently a new Working Party in Maryland that got on the ballot, and I'm going to have to reach out to them. I want to get them on the program and talk to them. One of the, I think, really strong evidence of why we need to go in a different direction, why we need an alternative to Trump, among all the others. I mean, there's so many reasons, and I always, putting first is Israel, Palestine, support for the genocide is so horrific, so awful that anybody who does that, and that includes Harris Biden, has to be replaced. We cannot support them. But there are many other policies, obviously, that Trump supports that are terrible. One of the, I guess, stories, one of the facts about Trump that has lately come out that I think does show that he should not be president is his involvement with this pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, his close relationship. And I bought into the claim that he wasn't that close to Epstein, that they did have a falling out. It is true in the early 2000s, and for a very Trumpian reason. Epstein was crudely propositioning one of the Mar-a-Lago members, and that was bad for Trump, right? Trump wants a really warm, inviting atmosphere, a friendly, non-threatening atmosphere at his club at Mar-a-Lago. If you pay him, and I'm sure it's like $100,000 a year, some enormous amount. I actually know somebody who is a member, and their kid has told me that it's really nice there, and that Trump is a really affable host and friendly, and he knows everybody, and he greets everybody with a smile and a warm handshake, and the atmosphere is very, very welcoming. Well, Epstein was making it unpleasant for people that are paying Trump money. So, of course, he's going to get rid of them, not because he, maybe he cares about it. He cares about them as human beings, maybe. But what he really presumably cares about is that they're clients, and he doesn't want an unpleasant atmosphere for his clients, people paying him money. So he says, get the hell out of here. And that caused a breach. But we know now, or at least it's very, very powerful evidence has come out with this sketch, and I'm not going to show it. I know it's everywhere. You can find it, of almost a prepubescent girl, very small breasts, not curvy, not curvaceous like a mature woman, but, like a adolescent girl, right? Is a drawing that Trump provided for this birthday book. Now, Trump claims it wasn't him, but the Wall Street Journal is standing by it. It does say Donald Trump on it. Maybe it's a false flag. You never know. It's possible that the Trump people came up with this and they're going to disprove it, and say, ha ha, see, it wasn't us. Maybe, but it doesn't look good for Trump at all. It looks like he clearly was in the know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nod, nod with the sleazy all boys network over there that was, not all boys, because Ghislaine Maxwell was a procuress, but really just absolutely disgusting conspiracy to sex traffic underage girls. It's horrible. It's a terrible thing that happened. It's been covered up. There was an entire government, in many ways, was complicit. People who were involved were let go. They were there were not even slaps on the wrist. This is what has happened in the part of the absolute corruption of our government, of our nation. And it's not just Trump, right? Look at this. Bill Clinton. The 2003 50th birthday includes contributions from Bill Clinton. And then it says allegedly Donald Trump because Trump denies that he drew the picture. The point about Clinton, I think, is important. And I'm going to, pursue that for a second. We already talked about Trump in this sketch, which is really, it is very disturbing. Is it not? Right? Again, an adolescent kind of girl, not a woman, not someone who's mature, but, violating the law and obviously taking advantage of a child. It's just horrible. The Clinton describes, this is what the Independent says, Epstein's having childlike curiosity. Now, I'm not going to make too much of the child. Obviously, he was trafficking in children. But the note reads, it's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long across all the years of learning and knowing adventures and also have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference in the solace of friends. So it's disgusting. I mean, this is an absolute panderer, right? I mean, he's just providing children for the most powerful, the most wealthy people in the world, probably, although it hasn't been proven. Bill Gates was probably part of that. Prince Andrew, I believe, is the prince who was part of that. I mean, it's just horrible. And Bill Clinton right there. So what more do you need to recognize we've got to move away from the Republican Party? They're monsters. They're horrible people. They're child abusers. They're genociders. What more do we need to see? I mean, now look, if you're hungry, if you're not making enough to pay for medication that your child needs to survive, you're going to be, hey, I don't give a crap what those people did on that island. That doesn't matter to me. I just care about being able to survive. I just care about being able to provide enough for my family, keeping a roof over my head. Democratic Party has failed at that too. Not that the Republican Party has succeeded, but the Democratic Party has failed at that. This is why we have what we have. There is one Democrat that I think is really trying to make a difference, and his name is Zohran Mamdani, and the Democrat Party has basically shunned him. They don't want any part of him. Certainly their leaders, to the extent that the Democrat Party is its leadership in the House and Senate, I think it clearly is, they've shunned him. They will not endorse him. The leadership that was elected unanimously has said, we're not going to support Zohran Mamdani. So I don't know how, given that, you can support the Democratic leadership. We're going to get to some of to that story and others, but I did just real quick, I noticed this in my inbox. I was really curious about this because I remember during the campus protests how I was really turned off by the way Brandeis University, a Jewish affiliated school, reacted to. And this goes to the whole issue of Palestine. So let's we started the show with that, so let's get to that real quick. So I saw this in my inbox today, my email inbox, and it's from your Daily Fill, which is apparently the Jewish philanthropy. Now, I don't know why I'm on their email list, but the subject was, can Brandeis, so Brandeis University, Jewish associate school that's clearly associated with Judaism, is apparently struggling, because their groove, they need to get their groove back. This is today. You can see it September 10. You can see it in the date as well, your Daily Fill. So I was very interested. And the first thought I had with regard to Brandeis University, and this also, by the way, goes to our friend Zorn, because Zorn has said, if you make me president, make me president. If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to have a more congenial atmosphere on college campuses in New York City for student protesters, for folks who are saying, no, this is wrong. We should not. The U.S. government should not be supporting genocide. We should not be part of this. We should be stopping Israel, not aiding and abetting Israel. Well, that message was very hostilely received in universities across the country by the administration of those universities. Police were sent in various cities, including New York, including Los Angeles, to roust out the students. And Mom Donnie saying, I won't do that. And that's a really good reason to support him, to endorse him. That's a real big reason, of course, that Hakeem Jeffries, the Congress member from Israel, and Chuck Schumer, the senator from Israel, refused to endorse him. Period, point blank, end of story. The president of Brandeis University tried to exploit the situation on college campuses, especially the reluctance of some administrators. I think they were I wish they had been a lot more reluctant. We saw plenty of administrators teaming up with the Biden administration first and then the Trump administration to crack skulls and beat heads of Palestinian pro-Palestine protesters and to attack to attack them and to support the Zion Nazi students, the thugs that we saw, say, UCLA, who beat up the students at the encampment. So Brandeis University president, seeing this, jumped on board and said, hey, we get it. If you're Jewish, you're not welcome on these college campuses, which was a complete lie, but it was the lie that was being promulgated at the time. You're not welcome. They're letting these protesters criticize Israel. How terrible. They're all Jew haters. Come to Brandeis. That was the argument. Well, flash forward over a year. Fast forward over a year. Brandeis is struggling with low enrollment, particularly among foreign students. Well, I'm sure because they don't want any part of, a Zionist institution except Jewish or Israeli students. Rising admin costs and high tuition. They've cut back on staff, and they let go their president, Ron Leibowitz. He was resigned after a no confidence vote by faculty. And this is from your Daily Fill, which is a sort of Jewish news, daily Jewish philanthropy. The faculty said they had no confidence in his leadership, pointing to frustration with his budgeting, fundraising, and response to campus protests against Israel. So I saw that and I really wanted more information. And again, my sense was that he had been a hardliner. He had been a skullcracker when it came to those Jewish students. The campus is about 9% Jewish, I believe. Those Jewish students who were protesting against Israel and in support of the Palestinian people, he was cracking skulls. He was beating people over the head. That was my impression. I didn't remember flatly. So I did some more delving. I really was trying to figure out. And just before we get to that, so this is Leibowitz. taking advantage, exploiting. This is the one who was let go. And I was still trying to figure out. Now, the faculty didn't like his reaction to on-campus Brandeis protests. We can see what he did when it came to protests elsewhere. He invited Jewish students who perceive themselves incorrectly, in my view, as being harassed, as being subject to Jew hatred. Now, maybe if they were outspoken in support of genocide, people were harassing them and criticizing them, and maybe flat out hated them. I hate people who support genocide. So, yeah, maybe some of them were subject to that. And Leibowitz said, come to Brandeis, you'll find a very welcoming atmosphere here for genociders. That was his message. But I still didn't know whether he had been too aggressive or not aggressive enough in the view of faculty with respect to student protests against Israel at Brandeis. Or maybe he was not harsh enough against pro-Israel protesters. I really didn't know what the reason was he got a no confidence vote. So I looked it up, and Forbes magazine very helpfully told me flat out the problem for the faculty was that he was too harsh. He treated too aggressively the anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza protesters. And he was, as a result, got a no confidence vote. And he said, forget it, I'm leaving. So every now and then, bad things do happen to bad people. Somebody who deserved to lose his job, he had completely lost sight or never cared about or was ignorant of the mission of a university, which obviously you can't educate people if you're killing them. Obviously, you are not a child of the Enlightenment, which extolled education, information, history, classics. You're not a child of that Enlightenment if you're defending the indefensible, crimes against humanity. So the faculty said, hey, your stance against the protesters is wrong. And those are anti-Israel protesters. So every now and then, bad things do happen to bad people. And I commend the faculty at Brandeis for standing up against this genocider. Gives me a little tiny faith, a little tiny hope that there may be some decency, out there somewhere. By the way, not seeing, and I'm frustrated, not seeing a lot of viewers out there. I'm not sure what the hell's going on here. Not watching, people aren't watching this. Give me a call, 240-242-5646. I think part of the problem is, and I do believe this, it's the algorithm. And I would have said that it was my image in the thumbnail, but I don't have an image in the thumbnail, so I'm not quite clear why there's non-response. I think maybe it's just that YouTube just doesn't want people to see this video. That's one explanation. Others, you don't want to see it. I don't know. CNN podcast. This really, I think, I don't love, there's issues we should have about Mamdani. There's definitely reason to be concerned. The statements where he said, yes, I'm more concerned about the phrase globalize the intifada. And I understand how, a rabbi in Israel who saw, a terrorist act would be upset. Well, the rabbi should be upset at what Israel's doing. And they should recognize why we are using the term globalize the intifada. But here's Zoran Mamdani in exclusive interview. They forgot the V. I thought that was interesting, so I highlighted it with Abby Phillip. Abby Phillip is not one of my favorites. She is a real tool of the elites at CNN, the billionaire class. And here she's going after Mamdani on grocery stores, publicly owned, that is. We'll play the clip, part of it. This is from, I couldn't find the video. There was only audio from CNN. I couldn't find it from CNN, so we'll play it from The Hill. Robbie Suave there, the libertarian, very critical of publicly owned groceries. I'm not going to play his clip. I'm just going to play a very brief part of this I think Phillips is very disingenuous, but we'll play it right here.
Take a look.
In Kansas City, where they had a government-run grocery store, and it's been there for years, but it's on the verge of closing because it doesn't work. They've been riddled with crime. They've dealt with just a lack of inventory. There are other examples where it just hasn't worked because, frankly, the government is not that good at being in the business of being in grocery stores.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. So it's a very disingenuous the way she presents that. Yes, it is true that the Kansas City, Missouri publicly owned grocery store is closing, and they have been riddled with problems. But aren't lots of privately owned grocery stores closing too? Don't we see lots of private businesses go bankrupt as well? There are plenty of examples of publicly owned grocery stores, retail, that do quite well. Now, I personally, so she's just cherry picking that one example that's getting a lot of attention. And there are a lot of factors at play at the Kansas City store. I don't want to get into too deep in the weeds, but it was in a rough area, a lot of crime, prostitution, there were supply issues. There's a picture of it. I don't have it right here, but it just like a big sort of blocky store, unattractive in a rough area. So any business in that area is going to struggle. The answer to my way of thinking is, okay, this one didn't work. Does that mean we get rid of all of them? When there are plenty of examples of publicly owned, government-owned grocery stores that are doing fine. Commissaries, army bases. In New York, there's an army commissary that is doing quite well, according to this Vital City article here. There are public markets in New York City, which are kind of a real interesting public-private partnership where the government owns the market, the actual space, the retail space, and then it leases it out to to entrepreneurs and small businesses. And they're doing fine. So there's many different models. There's a town in Kansas, I believe it's St. Paul, Kansas, not St. Paul, Minnesota, St. Paul, Kansas, that's for many years had a government-owned grocery store that's done well. Now, personally, I want to say this. If the private sector can do it, I'd rather have the private sector do it. There are issues with government owning businesses, but there are all obviously issues with private sector as well. When you have massive wealth and income inequality, when you have massive poverty, as we do in so many of our inner cities, when you have high crime rates, businesses, whether publicly owned or privately owned, are going to struggle. Abby Phillips, carrying water for the billionaire class, says the government just doesn't do this well. Well, what the government should do, in my opinion, and this is going to be beyond the power of the mayor of New York, is to massively wealth and income redistribute. Take the billions from the billionaire class, redistribute it down. Use tariffs, as Trump is, to build, well, he isn't, but as he claims to be doing, to bring good jobs back to this country. Raise the minimum wage. Create an economy that works for everybody. Raise the purchasing power of poor, struggling, and working people. And you have to also force businesses to compete. You have to break them up. In New York, as in many other cities, there's a limited number. Although in New York there are more actually, but still there's a limited number. There isn't real competition in the grocery market. And that's another big problem, meaning prices are too high. So there's many, many factors. The fact is, New York City, like so many other cities, has a real problem. There are food deserts. Poor neighborhoods don't have good options for their residents to shop. They just simply don't. People, and the point was made in the clip by the left host on the Hill, that many of the people who live in sort of underserved areas, north central Harlem, the South Bronx, parts of Brooklyn, They have to take subways. They have to walk long distances. They may have to take an Uber or a taxi cab. So there's lots of expenses involved because they don't have neighborhood grocery stores. Mamdani's trying to come up with a solution. I think it makes a lot of sense. It should be tried. But the media, rather than discussing it with him, trying to come up with, let's work out solutions. Do you have a plan B? What if this doesn't work? It doesn't. She just flat out says it doesn't work. Now, she does give one suggestion in that clip, which I didn't play, but where she talks about, why don't you work with grocery stores to do what they do well, which is to sell the product. Well, they aren't doing it well. That's an absurd statement. The reason you need the publicly owned groceries, or why that's being proposed, is because these massive grocery store chains aren't opening in the poor districts. They're not. The profits aren't there. That's why you have government subsidized markets, government owned markets. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the government to subsidize these for-profit businesses with CEOs who are making many millions of dollars. That's wasteful. Their administrative costs are much higher than the government's would be in terms of salaries for the top executives, not for the workers. So I think it's a great idea that Mamdani came up with. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe it'll work out in some neighborhoods and won't in others. We've seen it work in many places, but CNN isn't going to propose that. CNN isn't on your side. CNN is not acting in the public interest. CNN is trying to undermine a working class, pro-working class candidate. They don't want him to succeed. Their fear, and we see this over and over and over again, the fear of elites is that a Mamdani, a democratic socialist, will succeed. And people say, wait, why are we allowing ourselves to be exploited, to be abused, to be impoverished by the 0.01%? Together, we can get something better for ourselves. And that's what they're afraid of. And that's why Abby Phillips is out there doing her best to torpedo Zoran Mamdani. Now, they all see, this is why, and it looks like, at this point, I was talking to my son about this, I have to say, looks like Mamdani will be the next mayor, because it does not appear that Curtis Sliwa or Eric Adams is going anywhere. And the only hope, it would appear, I won't say the only, but the puncher chance that Andrew Cuomo would have is in a head-to-head. And doesn't look like he's going to get that. Without that head-to-head, he's got almost, just over 50% of Mamdani's numbers. But in that head-to-head, we talked about this yesterday, by the way. In that head-to-head, by the way, Ari, great to see you in the chat. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. What we're seeing, and what everyone's seeing, this is exactly why they want that head-to-head, is that Cuomo could conceivably win in just a him versus Mamdani. And that's why, that's a big reason you're not seeing Democratic polls like Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries endorse Mamdani, because there's still this hope, faint though it may be, there's still a hope he could lose. And they know, the fact of the matter is that if Jeffries and Schumer endorsed Mamdani, he would get a surge of support. Tragically, these are unpopular people. People do not like Hakeem Jeffries. People do not like Chuck Schumer. But there's a core of upper middle class New Yorkers, not the rich, not the billionaire elites, but there's still a middle class in New York. They may own their own apartments or townhouses. They're doing okay. They've been loyal Democrats, their family maybe since 1920, since Al Smith ran for president in 1924. These are not red diaper babies. These are middle-class John F. Kennedy Democrats. Catholics, many Jewish. And they like Chuck Schumer. There are middle-class African-American New Yorkers who like Hakeem Jeffries. If those guys came out and said, yeah, we endorse Mamdani, that would be enough to sway maybe only 2, 3, 4, 5% of the New York City electorate. Remember, Mamdani, Jeffries and Schumer are the two most powerful non-Republicans in the United States right now. They are the two most powerful people in this country who aren't Republican, are Schumer and Jeffries. They're both New York City politicians. If they came out in support of Mamdani, they would swing the election for certain in his direction. They know that. Now, their calculus includes this thought. If we don't endorse Mamdani, he probably will still win, and we won't look great. So we may want to endorse him, just so we can say we endorsed him. And so people don't look at us and think we're useless, we're powerless, we have no, we're not in any way leaders. They could be saying that, and I think they may be. But as long as there's a faint hope that Cuomo could pull this out, they're not going to support Mamdani because they don't want him to be mayor. And what they really, really, really don't want is to offend their donors, the real estate magnates in New York City, the grocery chain owners, Wall Street, the Zion-Nazis. They don't want to offend any of those people more even than they want to look like they're sort of on the side of the people. So that's why they're not endorsing, because they think they can stop him. They're still hopeful. They're still prayerful they can stop him. AOC doesn't get that at all. We're going to play a clip from her. Why I don't, view her as somebody that we should ever think of as a leader. What do I say? Oh, yeah, mask off moment. I supported Joe and Kamala for the good of the party. So she puts party first. That's who AOC is. By the way, from Ari, would love to hear your take on the effects of blackmail a la Epstein at all on our political system. So I don't, you know what, Ari, I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's so much blackmail. I just think it's outright bribery. I really do. I think these politicians just are, they got their hands out all the time. It's not so much that they're afraid of being exposed. It's not so much that there's extortion. There may be that. But I think it's more just bribery. They're getting paid. Now, I don't know who would be blackmailing Trump. I mean, I don't think Trump clearly didn't want the Epstein files to come out because he'll look bad, right? He'll look bad. So he's saying, no, we're going to keep it from coming out. But blackmail suggests that someone's holding him hostage. They're saying, hey, we're going to reveal your bad actions unless you do what we want. And I think Trump's record suggests more that you get further with him if you just give him money. Now, it could be Israel. It could be, he's saying bribery may be what I was thinking. Thanks. It could be Israel. What people are saying is that Trump is, Israel has receipts. Israel can tie Trump to Epstein. And that may be true. But I honestly think it's more just a case of money. It's a case of Miriam Adelson giving money to Trump, huge amounts of money to get him elected. The argument that Trump was being blackmailed by Russia was behind the Russiagate hoax, right? That they have a P tape. Putin has all sorts of information on Trump. So Trump is doing what Putin wants because Putin will expose Trump if Trump doesn't do that. I don't think that was ever, I mean, it seems clear that was BS. It was never true. Putin was not holding Trump hostage in any meaningful way. Putin was not. So I don't think it's blackmail. I haven't seen it. Now, it could be, not to, I don't rule anything out, but I'm not going to say that's the factor here. I think the factor is corruption, greed, bribery. Okay, let's get to our friend AOC, New York City politician, and kind of a little bit of a mask-off moment here, as I call it, because I think she's telling you why she's telling you, I'm not putting you first. Your interests aren't what matters. My constituents don't matter to me, or at least not as much as Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer? Maybe.
We have a Democratic nominee. Are we a party that rallies behind our nominee or not? And I believe, as a person who has rallied, I supported Joe Biden when he was the nominee. He was not my preferred candidate in the primary. I, of course, supported Vice President Harris.
All right, so I supported them. I, of course, supported Joe Biden. And she's saying, well, why aren't we rallying behind the nominee? I did it. Well, you shouldn't have. I mean, you really absolutely shouldn't have. You just gave in. You just bent your knee. And you're acknowledging it. He wasn't my choice. You're saying, look, I had to hold my nose. I followed orders. Why? Why would you do that? Why do you feel you owe any allegiance to the Democratic Party? Well, she'll tell you in a sec. Here we go.
Presidency because I am a Democrat. And what
so it's because I am a Democrat. I hear this argument all the time. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. You choose a party, I would assume, because the party represents your values, because the policies that the party espouses, the principles that it says it's fighting for, are what you want. What you believe are right is right. But you couldn't have believed that what Joe Biden would fight for would be right. You couldn't have believed, based on his record, you couldn't have believed, based on his statements, that what Kamala Harris would fight for would be right. And look, I'll give a little bit of slack, right, with the Biden thing, because it was Trump and this and that. And okay, maybe. But when we saw with Harris, after the debacle that was the Biden administration, what we saw with, and how he did not, how Biden did not keep promises he made to you to say, fight for the $15 minimum wage. He didn't do that, AOC. AOC, your big deal, when you first came into Congress in 2018, you had a sit-in with the Sunrise Movement outside Nancy Pelosi's office because you wanted the Green New Deal. Maybe was that 2020? I don't know. Whenever it was. I don't know. Must have been 2020. I don't know. And Joe Biden was terrible on the environment. Kamala said she was going to frack. So you say you're a Democrat, but these politicians that you endorse, that you supported, that you spoke for, their policies weren't, at least as you would understand them, I believe, Democratic in any way. They are Democrats in name only, as far as you're concerned. You even said you would be in a different party from Joe Biden. So I don't understand that argument. I don't understand that I support him because I'm a Democrat. What the hell kind of stupid comment is that? Would you have, will you support would you support Joe Manchin? Would you support Kirsten Sinema? That's BS. But you're saying it. So what I believe you. You're saying you care about party. You care about the D. You don't care about the policies. You don't care about your constituents. You don't care about why you were elected, which was to take on the Democratic Party. Complete mask off moment. Total phony.
We do is that we use our primaries to settle our differences, and once we have
So she says, we use our primaries. She says, well, we can fight it out in the primaries. We use it to settle our differences. Did you settle your differences? Were they settled fairly? Do you think Bernie was treated fairly by the party in 2016 or 2020? Were the issues that the American public believes in settled fairly? Did a primary, a vibrant, viable primary, a legitimate primary season occur in 2016? Because you're saying that's why we have the primaries, to settle our differences. Was there one in 2024 at all? Was there anything in 24 with Kamala, who you say, of course, I supported her? And you actually had to lie to support her. You had to say she was working tirelessly for a ceasefire, which was true, was false, and we all know it.
And what we do is that we use our primaries to settle our differences, and once we have a nominee, we rally behind that nominee.
Says we do that. No, you don't. You do that, but the corporatists don't. They're like, hey, Mamdani doesn't suit my purposes. Mamdani doesn't share my values. He's a democratic socialist. He wants to put government-owned grocery stores in food deserts rather than forcing the people who live there to truck five subway stops away. Well, that's not my values. Mamdani doesn't want tax money going to lock up protesters against the Israeli genocide. Well, that's not my value, so I'm not going to support him. So why do you think that's what your party does, AOC? You have no reason to believe that.
Very concerned about the example that is being set by anybody in our party. I believe that we must set the example of supporting the party's nominee, because it complicates, if an individual doesn't want to support the party's nominee now, it complicates their ability to ask voters to support any nominee later.
No, it doesn't. I was watching Revolutionary Change, right? Generational change, revolutionary change. And this host, Peter, who sometimes I like, made the point that he agreed with her that if party leaders say, well, I'm going to endorse this candidate, this choice in the primary, but not that one, it complicates the situation down the road. Not at all. No, you endorse the people you like and you don't endorse the people you don't like, regardless of what their party affiliation is. That seems to me what we all want, what the American public would want. Doesn't complicate anything. I don't know why Peter thought she's right there. But yeah, this sets an example. It's sets about. I don't see why it sets any example. What you should be saying is, and let me play. I want to play a little bit more of this because her answer so bad. But let me play a little more.
Complicates. If an individual doesn't want to support the party's nominee now, it complicates their ability to ask voters to support any nominee later. No,
why don't you? And this is what I don't understand. Why isn't the takeaway for you? I'm not going to just blindly support Democrats anymore. It's clear the leadership isn't going to do that, so neither will I. I will only support Democrats who share my vision for a better America, for a peaceful America, for a clean, green, sustainable America, for a pro-working class America. Those are the only Democrats I'll support. That's what she should be saying. If she said that, I would respect her. But she doesn't say it, and I don't respect her, not in the least.
Mayoral, presidential, what have you. And so I think for the good of the party, we must put our differences aside.
Isn't that interesting? It's for the good of the party. That's what matters to her, not the American people. Not what's best for us. If you cared about the American people, you wouldn't have endorsed Kamala Harris. You would have come out and supported Jill Stein because she would have been good for the American people. And who knows, maybe she could have won. You build a groundswell. No one thought Bernie could win in 2016. He came within an eyelash of winning. So she's completely missing the boat. But what she's telling you is she doesn't support you. She doesn't put the American people first. She's putting party first. That's what matters. And this is something we hate. The American public is so desperate for candidates who will stand up to their party, who will stand up to their party's leadership, who will go after their party's leaders. That's what we want. That's the opposite of what AOC gives you. The complete opposite.
Our party's nominee.
It sounds as though you are frustrated, though, with Jeffries and Schumer for not publicly making a position on this, yes?
All right. It sounds like you're frustrated. Yes, it does. It sounds like she is frustrated. And you think this is a moment where she say, damn right I am. She could say, I'm really angry about this. I didn't particularly like Joe Biden. I didn't think that much of Kamala Harris, but I was a good soldier. I went out there and I held my nose and I told everyone how great these people were, even though they sucked. And now when there's finally a pretty damn good Democrat out there, someone who's going to fight for working people, not for the billionaires, Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries won't even support him. So yeah, I'm frustrated. Yeah, I'm angry. Wouldn't that be nice if she said that for once? Nope.
Making a position on this, yes?
No, I mean, I think that this isn't about personalities, right? I think.
No, it isn't. It's about, you know what it's about? It's about corruption, pure and simple. It's about the power of big money on the Democratic leaders and on the Democratic rank and file. Remember, AOC, you voted for Hakeem Jeffries. You supported him to be your leader. So you can't be in the least bit surprised, shocked. I mean, you could say I'm frustrated because I voted for this clown, for this goofball. But that's who he is, and that's who you are.
Of a Trump administration, the stakes are high, and I want, of course, to see our party come together and stick together, despite our differences. And that's how I feel about the matter.
Well, why would you want the party to stick together? See, I don't understand that either. Yeah, stick together if they're going to stand up to Israel. Stick together if they're going to stand up to Big Pharma. Stick together if they're going to stand up to Wall Street. Sure. But that's not what this party does. And that's not what you said either. So, again, the message could not be clearer from every corner of the Democratic Party. They're not on your side. They're not going to fight for you. They're not going to fight to make America a better place for poor, struggling, and working people. They're not going to take money from the billionaire class. They're not going to take weapons away from Israel. That's who your Democratic Party is. That isn't going to change. And therefore, we have to change. The definition of insanity, right? Over and over, we hear it. You keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. We can vote for Democrats until the cows come home, and the result will continue to be our country gets worse and worse, becomes a less and less pleasant place to live, and the future for our children becomes ever darker and ever grimmer. Sorry to leave you on such a sour note, down note, but I don't know where else to go with this. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics.